Hey everybody, Mike with 4B's Honey. We're up here in the shop. This is like part two. I'll try to meld these two videos together for you. Y'all know what a great videographer I am, right? In the interest of time, I've already dumped most of my sugar in here. We're making our candy boards today, and I just want to show you guys, share my recipe. You know, pretty simple. It's not rocket science, but I just want to share with you guys my recipe. If it makes your beekeeping life a little easier, then it makes all of our beekeeping lives a little bit easier. So a lot of people have helped me down through the years, and I'm very appreciative of that always. Somebody give you a tip, it's worth its weight in gold in this business. So I've dumped, I'll show you here. We've dumped about, I think there's 36 pounds of sugar in this, and this is our first batch for the morning. I've already got my, so yesterday we made the boards up, and I showed you that. So these guys are all done, sticks are in, and the wire's in, and we've got our, what we're gonna do is we're gonna put paper in the bottom of this, and let's set this up here and I'll show you what we're gonna do. So here it is. Now you can use, you can see here I've got newspaper, and I've got these. This is the paper that comes from the foundation. When I buy the foundation, this is in between the wax that separates the sheets of foundation. So they fit almost perfectly in here. So they're just a little bit short. So I just tear a little piece and put it right there. And all this is for, or you can use the newspaper here. And you can see I use the comics because my bees all have a really good sense of humor. So I always use the comic page for them. But any paper you use, just make sure that it's you know, biodegradable. You don't want to use like sales papers, things that are coated in wax and that kind of thing. This is really easy for the bees to chew through. And the idea is that you're going to keep your sugar from falling through these holes. That's the only idea, putting the paper in there. So once we get the paper, we'll get the sugar mixed up, we get the paper in. I have a block of wood that I set down here. And you don't necessarily have to have that. It just makes packing that sugar in a little bit easier. And then I'll take a, all right, let me get so close to you. I'll take a jar and sit right in the center of this, and then pack the sugar around it. This will keep the vent hole open so the air can circulate through the hive. It's very, very, very important that you keep air circulating through your hive through the winter. Cold bees do great. Doesn't affect them to get cold. It does affect them to get wet. If you don't allow that moisture to evaporate from your hive, condensation from where they breathe, that will condensate on top of the hive, drip down onto the cluster, and start killing your bees. So very, very important. People want to seal their hive up completely. Don't do that. Make sure you have, I'm not saying leave the top off, but leave enough ventilation so that the bees can get some air through there. So with that being said, oh, and with the block of wood that I put in, I put pollen patties in here, and I'll show you what those look like. I buy these from my local guy. He buys them from Dedant and sells them to me. These are pollen patties. They come in these huge sheets like this, and I cut them down into thinner pieces. It makes them a little more manageable in the hive. And I'll add, I'll triple stack those in there, about 2 or 3 sheets. And this is just paper that's on the outside of them. The bees can eat through that, and you can leave that on there if you want to. I usually pull off the top layer if I have time. But this is a protein source for them. So they have their carbohydrates from the sugar, but they've also got to have protein source. This is a mixture of, it has some egg product in it, has some grain product in it from plant proteins. It has high fructose corn syrup to hold it all together. It has salt in it, which bees are livestock, they need salt, and that's their high protein source that gets them through the winter. And it's not made so that the queen thinks that there's a this huge pollen nectar flow going on, and starts laying eggs like crazy. So this still kind of suppresses her egg laying, but yet gives them a nice protein source. So 36 pounds of sugar here, and I pour my water directly into it. And this has a little bit of vinegar in it. I use about 1 teaspoon of white vinegar per 8 pounds of sugar. And that just cuts down on the ability for this thing to create mold in any way whatsoever. I use 1.5 ounces of water per pound of sugar. So 1.5 ounces of water per pound of sugar, and a teaspoon of white vinegar per 8 pounds of sugar. So I think this has like, I don't know, a tablespoon and then another teaspoon or something in it of vinegar. It's not that important, the ratio. What's important is that once you mix this, it should look like wet sand. You don't want it liquid like this is over here. You don't want to see a bunch of dry powder in here like this. So I'm going to mix here real good. I may pause you here in just a minute so I can wash my hands before I touch my phone again. I'm going to mix this up real good, and then I'm going to show you what this is going to look like before we put it in. And I'll spoon it in there for you and show you. You don't want to put this in too early. If you put this in, your last inspection in September or October, there's still all kinds of stuff happening out in the wild out here. Even though there's flowers that we don't really necessarily see, there'll still be some goldenrod around. There will still be, there's all kinds of white asters, little tiny white flowers that we don't necessarily pay any attention to. And the bees are still out getting that real nectar and real pollen. So if we put this stuff in there, the stuff that we use to kind of help them through, they're not really appreciative of that. They're like, why is he putting this crap in here when I've got all kinds of food out here to eat and he's taking up all kinds of room? So what they will do is they will graciously thank you, and they'll start hauling it out the front door and dumping it in the woods for you. So you want to make sure that the bees are in winter mode and ready to batten down the hatches and realize that there's not a lot of food out there anymore, or that there's not any. So get a couple frosts in, good killing frost. I'm not talking about a spattering of frost where it got down to 39 one night. Make sure you get a couple of really good frosts in, or all your work will be in vain. So I'm gonna mix this up. I'm gonna pause you for just a second, and I'll show you what this stuff looks like before we dump it in the hive. Be right back with you. All right, I'm back with you. I got this stuff mixed up really good. You want to make sure, work it, turn it over real good so that there's no dry spots down the bottom and in the center of it. Of course, most people aren't making this much. I mean, if you only have one hive, I had about 8 pounds of this mixture somewhere, about 8 pounds of it to each hive, plus a pollen patty. And so I'll show you what it looks like here. Get the sugar off of me, it's a little sticky stuff. So it just looks like damp sand. So I mean, you could make a little sand castle out of this. You don't want it too wet, because the idea is that you want this to dry, and once it dries, it's going to be hard as a brick. And combined with the paper and the sugar, it's going to help you with that moisture that we talked about earlier. It's going to really help absorb that moisture that's inside the hive. So once we get this in these forms, I'm just going to set it here on the floor of the shop and let it dry for a couple days. Usually within 48 hours, it's pretty well dried up. And let's see, I almost forgot to put my jar in here. This is some really high-tech stuff. I'm talking, this is genius high-tech stuff right here. So we've got my block of wood, I got my jar, and we're just gonna throw this in here. Sorry, I know I'm such a great videographer, especially doing this one-handed. Someday I'll be professional and I'll set this up, and we'll have a real stand to set this on. And who knows, maybe even a real camera. I mean, that's like too much to ask for. But so I'm just going to tamp this in here and sort of just pat it down into the corners. The bees will they'll eat through the bottom of this and make them a little way up through the center. But they'll start eating from the bottom of it. So you may open your hive up and be like, oh yes, I got plenty. If you tap on the top, the ceiling falls in. So once you get into winter, if you get a warm day, you want to check and see how much candy you still got left in your hive. Make sure you kind of flip the top of it to make sure it doesn't fall in. But a lot of times you'll be able to see it right in here. The bees will have it all eat up, and it'll just be just a thin layer left right up here on top. So took my jar out, not so important anymore. I'll usually tear a hole in this before I put it on the hive. You don't have to, they'll eat through it. But now we're going to pull this block of wood out. It's like high-tech stuff, man. And then here's the pollen patties. I'm going to hold this up really close to the camera so you can smell of it. They smell fantastic. I haven't never tasted of it, but I'm sure it must taste delicious. If you put one of these things in the hive, the bees immediately just take over and go after it. So as you can see, this fits absolutely perfect. Right? Yeah, just tamp it down in there. The bees will remove all this paper and they'll get rid of it. I pulled the top layer of paper off of this one, but they'll move all that and haul it out the front of the hive. You'll see them on warm days that we throwing newspaper and stuff out the front of the hive. So there you have it. This is making candy boards. Don't tell nobody my super secret recipes. Everybody will start making their own candy, and then what? Just kidding. Y'all share, like, tell your friends about our page, and if you got any tips and you see anything I'm doing wrong, heck, man, I learn something new every day. So, you know, seriously, leave notes in the comments. If you do something a different way, you ask 10 beekeepers how they do something, you'll get 15 different answers on how they do it. So it's not right, it's not wrong, it's just beekeeping. We just try to help them out best we can. But thanks for watching. Don't forget to like our page, 4Bees Honey. Come visit us. We still got some honey. We'll have gift sets. We'll be doing some shows. We've even got some new fire starters we're baking. We've got a couple flavors of lip balms and some different lotions. But come see us if you're out and about around any of these shows. We'd love to talk to you about beekeeping. Take care. Thanks for watching.